Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by asking you a question. How often do we hold on to things that weigh us down? Our fears, our worries, our doubts, they cling to us like chains, pulling us away from the freedom we were created to experience. But what if I told you that the key to true peace and purpose is surrender? Not giving up, but giving in to the hands of the one who holds the universe. You see, life has a way of making us believe that we are in control. We plan, we strategize, we calculate. And while these things are necessary, they're not sufficient because control is an illusion. The reality is that we were never designed to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. That job belongs to God. When I say leave everything in God's hands, I don't mean become passive. I don't mean sit back and let life happen to you. No, I'm talking about active trust, a posture of faith that says, God, I trust you enough to give you what I cannot control, and I will steward well what you've entrusted to me. The first thing we must understand is that God's hands are sovereign. He sees the end from the beginning. He's not guessing or figuring it out as he goes along. No, he is the Alpha and the Omega, the author of time itself. When you surrender your plans, your pain, your uncertainties into his hands, you're not giving them to someone who is indifferent or uninformed. You're entrusting them to the one who knows exactly how to work all things together for your good. So stop wrestling with outcomes that are beyond your control. You don't have to figure it all out. You just need to place it in the hands of the one who already has. I think about this, the same hands that shape the mountains and calm the seas are the hands that hold your life. They are strong enough to bear the burdens that are too heavy for you. We wear ourselves out trying to fix things that only God can fix. We lose sleep over problems that require divine solutions. But hear me, your strength will fail you, but his never will. His hands are not just strong, they are dependable. He can carry what you cannot. This is where it becomes personal. God's hands are not only sovereign and strong, they are loving. They are the hands of a father who cares deeply for his children. He's not just managing your life from a distance, he's intimately involved in every detail. When you leave everything in his hands, you're not just letting go of control, you're stepping into a place of trust, knowing that his plans for you are good. He doesn't just want to lead you, he wants to bless you, to teach you, to shape you into the person he created you to be. Letting go doesn't mean losing, it means gaining the freedom to walk in your purpose. When you release your life into God's hands, you free yourself from the anxiety of trying to be the author of your own story. You allow him to write something far greater than you could ever imagine. But let me warn you, letting go isn't easy. It requires humility. It requires faith. It requires you to trust that God knows what he's doing even when you don't. Closing. Well, God's hands are sovereign. This is a truth that stands at the foundation of all creation and the cornerstone of our faith. When we say that God's hands are sovereign, we acknowledge that he possesses absolute authority, power, and control over everything in existence. Nothing happens by chance and nothing escapes his knowledge or oversight. The vastness of this truth is both humbling and liberating because it reminds us that we are part of a divine plan orchestrated by a God who is not only infinitely powerful but also perfectly wise. I think for a moment about the intricacies of the universe. The galaxies with their countless stars move in perfect harmony, obeying laws set in place long before humanity ever existed. The earth orbits the sun with precision, maintaining the conditions necessary for life. Our seasons change, tides ebb and flow, and life flourishes all under the watchful eye of the Creator. These are not random occurrences or cosmic accidents. They are the result of a sovereign God who holds all things together by the power of his word. The same God who manages the cosmos is the God who manages your life. This is the essence of sovereignty. Nothing is too vast for him to govern, and nothing is too small for him to notice. The sovereignty of God's hands means that he is never surprised. We live in a world where uncertainty often reigns. Plans fail, storms arise, and life takes unexpected turns. Yet even in the midst of chaos, God remains in control. He is not reacting to events, he is directing them. He knows the end from the beginning, and he is actively working all things according to his purpose. This understanding gives us peace because it reminds us that we are not at the mercy of random events or human decisions. We are held in the hands of a God who is purposeful in all that he does. Consider the story of Joseph in the Bible. As a young man, Joseph had dreams of greatness, but his journey to fulfillment was anything but straightforward. He was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned. To the human eye, it might have seemed as though his life was spinning out of control. But God's hands were sovereignly guiding every step. What others intended for evil, God intended for good. Through Joseph's trials, God not only saved an entire nation from famine, but also elevated Joseph to a position of influence and authority. This is what it means to trust in the sovereignty of God's hands, to believe that even when life appears to be unraveling, God is weaving a masterpiece. God's sovereignty extends beyond the grand narratives of history and into the intimate details of our lives. Every breath we take, every beat of our hearts, every step we walk is sustained by his hand. He is not distant or detached. He is actively involved in the minutiae of our existence. The Bible tells us that he knows the number of hairs on our heads and that not even a sparrow falls to the ground without his knowledge. If he cares for the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, how much more does he care for you and me? His sovereignty is not cold or impersonal. It is deeply relational. It is the sovereignty of a loving father who delights in his children and orchestrates their lives for their ultimate good. At times, the sovereignty of God can be difficult to understand, especially when we face trials and suffering. How can a sovereign God allow pain? How can he permit loss? These are questions that challenge our faith and test our trust. Yet, even in the darkest moments, God's sovereignty is at work. His hands are not only guiding us through the storm, but also shaping us in the process. He uses trials to refine our character, deepen our faith, and draw us closer to him. Thus, we may not always see the purpose in our pain, but we can trust that God does. His ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. What we perceive as setbacks or detours are often the very means by which God is accomplishing his purposes in our lives. God, one of the most profound aspects of God's sovereignty is that it operates within the framework of our free will. He does not force us to follow him or make decisions for us, yet he weaves our choices, both good and bad, into his divine plan. This mystery is a testament to his infinite wisdom. He can take the most broken situations, the most regrettable mistakes, and the most painful losses and transform them into something beautiful. This is the power of sovereign hands. They are not bound by human limitations or constrained by earthly circumstances. They are capable of bringing redemption and restoration out of even the most hopeless situations. To trust in the sovereignty of God's hands is to relinquish the illusion of control. As human beings, we often strive to manage every aspect of our lives, believing that we can chart our own course and secure our own future. But control is a burden we were never meant to carry. When we insist on holding on to it, we become anxious, frustrated, and overwhelmed. True peace comes when we surrender our lives to the one who is truly in control. When we place our hopes, dreams, and fears into God's hands, we find rest. We no longer have to worry about the outcome because we know that he is working all things for our good and his glory. God's sovereignty also gives us confidence in his promises. If his hands are sovereign, then his promises are sure. He cannot lie and he cannot fail. When he says that he will never leave us or forsake us, we can believe him. God, when he says that he has plans to prosper us and not to harm us, we can trust him. His sovereignty ensures that what he has spoken will come to pass. No obstacle is too great, no enemy is too strong, and no circumstance is too dire to thwart his purposes. This is why we can live with hope, even in uncertain times. Our hope is not based on what we see, but on who God is. The sovereignty of God's hands is not just a theological concept. It is a reality that transforms the way we live. It changes how we approach decisions, how we face challenges, and how we respond to uncertainty. When we understand that God is in control, we can let go of fear and walk in faith. We can step out boldly, knowing that he is directing our steps. We can persevere through trials, knowing that he is using them for our good. And we can rest in his peace, knowing that our lives are held in hands that are sovereign, strong, and loving. In the end, the sovereignty of God's hands is a call to trust. It is an invitation to release our grip on the things we cannot control and to place them into the hands of the one who controls everything. It is a reminder that we are not alone, that we are not forgotten, and that we are not without purpose. God's hands are sovereign, and in those hands we find security, hope, and peace. God's hands are strong. This truth anchors our faith in the power and ability of the Creator to uphold, sustain, and carry us through life's trials. His strength is unmatched, unyielding, and unwavering. When we speak of the strength of God's hands, we are referring not only to his physical might, but also to his unwavering authority and unshakable reliability. It is a strength that secures the universe in its perfect balance and holds the lives of his children in perfect care. Understanding this gives us assurance in a world that often feels fragile and uncertain. I think about the strength required to form the earth and stretch out the heavens. God's hands were the tools by which he spoke creation into existence. The very ground we walk on, the air we breathe, and the sun that warms us were all crafted by his mighty hands. This is not the work of chance or coincidence. It is the deliberate and powerful act of a God whose strength is limitless. If his hands are strong enough to bring forth light from darkness and order from chaos, they are certainly strong enough to handle the weight of our burdens and the complexities of our lives. Life, however, often tests our belief in God's strength. We face challenges that seem insurmountable, problems that feel too big, and situations that drain our energy and hope. It is in these moments that we must remind ourselves of the truth: God's hands are not weak or weary. They are not trembling under the weight of the world's troubles. Instead, they remain steadfast, ready to lift us when we fall, to protect us when we are vulnerable, and to carry us when we can no longer carry ourselves. His strength is not only sufficient, it is abundant. The strength of God's hands is not just about physical might, it's about the strength of his character. His hands are strong because they are guided by his perfect nature. They are strong in love, strong in justice, and strong in mercy. His strength is not used to dominate or control, but to uplift and empower. When we place our lives in his hands, we are placing them in the care of someone who is both able and willing to act on our behalf. His strength is not impersonal or indifferent. It is deeply personal and profoundly caring. God's hands are also strong enough to sustain us. The weight of life's responsibilities, the pain of loss, and the uncertainty of the future can feel overwhelming. We often find ourselves asking, how much more can I handle? But the truth is, we were never meant to carry these burdens alone. God's hands are there to support us, to bear the weight that we cannot, and to provide the strength we need to keep moving forward. His hands are like the foundation of a great building, unshakable and reliable. No matter how fierce the storms of life may be, his strength ensures that we remain standing. There is something deeply comforting about knowing that God's hands are strong enough to protect us. In a world where danger and uncertainty often seem to lurk around every corner, his strength is a shield that guards us. He is our refuge, our fortress, and our ever-present help in times of trouble. This protection is not merely physical, it extends to every aspect of our being. He guards our hearts, our minds, and our souls. Even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we can fear no evil, for his strength is with us, surrounding us and holding us secure. The strength of God's hands is also evident in his ability to redeem. There is no situation so broken, no life so shattered that his strength cannot restore. He takes the fragments of our failures, the ruins of our mistakes, and the ashes of our pain and transforms them into something beautiful. This is the power of his strong hands. They do not simply repair, they recreate. They do not merely fix, they renew. When we feel that we are too far gone, too damaged, or too lost, his hands remind us that nothing is beyond his reach. In our weakness, his strength is made perfect. This is one of the great paradoxes of faith. While we often strive to be strong on our own, God invites us to lean on his strength. He does not expect us to have it all together or to carry every load by ourselves. Instead, he calls us to come to him, to cast our burdens on him, and to rest in the knowledge that his strength is sufficient. This is not a sign of failure or defeat. It is a recognition of his greatness and our dependence on him. His hands are strong enough to fight for us. Life is full of battles, some external, others internal. We wrestle with doubt, fear, temptation, and adversity, but we do not fight these battles alone. The same hands that parted the Red Sea for the Israelites, that struck down Goliath through David, and that calmed the storm for the disciples are the hands that fight for us today. His strength is a reminder that the battle is not ours, but his. And when he fights, victory is assured. The strength of God's hands is not diminished by time or circumstances. Human strength fades, even the strongest among us grow weary. But God's strength is eternal. It does not waver or falter. It is the same yesterday, today, and forever. This constancy gives us confidence. No matter how much the world changes or how uncertain the future may seem, we can trust that his strength will always be there for us. Even in moments of silence, when it feels as though God is distant, his strength is at work. Just as the roots of a tree grow deep and strong beneath the surface, unseen but essential, so too does God's strength operate in ways we may not always recognize. He is working behind the scenes, preparing the way and holding all things together, even when we cannot see it. God's hands are also strong enough to fulfill his promises. Every word he speaks is backed by his power. He is not like humans who sometimes make promises they cannot keep. When he says he will do something, it will be done. His strength ensures that nothing can thwart his plans or derail his purposes. This is why we can trust him completely. His strength is the guarantee that his promises are yes and amen. Finally, the strength of God's hands is a source of hope. In a world that often feels fragile and fleeting, his strength reminds us that we are anchored to something unshakable. When we feel like giving up, his hands lift us. So when we are surrounded by darkness, his hands guide us. When we are overwhelmed, his hands hold us steady. This is the power of God's strength. It does not just sustain us, it transforms us, enabling us to face life's challenges with courage and confidence. God's hands are strong. They are the hands of a creator, a protector, a redeemer, and a father. They are strong enough to carry the weight of the world and tender enough to hold us close. In his hands we find security, support, and strength for every moment of our lives. God's hands are loving, a truth that resonates deeply with the core of who he is and how he relates to his creation. His love is not a fleeting emotion or a conditional response, but an eternal and unchanging essence. The hands that form the heavens and shape the earth are the same hands that gently cradle each of us with an unyielding, compassionate love. To understand the love of God's hands is to see his care woven into every aspect of our existence, from the grand design of the universe to the intimate details of our lives. God's love is most vividly expressed in how he uses his hands to guide us. Like a skilled craftsman, his hands shape and mold us, not out of obligation, but out of a deep, abiding love for his creation. He sees in us the potential to reflect his glory, and his loving hands work tirelessly to bring that potential to fruition. Even when the process is painful, his love remains steadfast. The sculptor's chisel may feel harsh, but it is guided by a hand that knows the masterpiece being created. God's hands never strike in anger or indifference. They only move with the purpose of love. The love of God's hands is also evident in his provision. Every need we have is met by his loving care. The food we eat, the air we breathe, the shelter we enjoy all come from his hands. Yet his provision goes far beyond the physical. He provides comfort in our sorrow, strength in our weakness, and hope in our despair. His hands reach into the deepest recesses of our hearts, touching the places that are broken and bringing healing. He is not a distant provider, but an intimately involved Father who knows exactly what we need and supplies it with love. God's hands are loving in their protection. Life is filled with dangers, both seen and unseen, and yet we are held securely in the shelter of his hands. Like a shepherd guarding his flock, he watches over us, guiding us away from harm and towards safety. His love does not promise a life free from trials, but it does promise his presence and protection through them. Even when we are unaware of the dangers around us, his loving hands are actively shielding us. There is no storm too fierce, no enemy too strong, and no darkness too deep for his hands to overcome. In his love, we find refuge. The love of God's hands is perhaps most powerfully demonstrated in his willingness to reach down into our mess. Our lives are often marked by mistakes, failures, and sins that create a chasm between us and God. Yet his loving hands are never afraid to get dirty. He reaches into the mud and mire of our circumstances, lifting us out and setting our feet on solid ground. This is not the act of a distant deity, but of a loving Father who refuses to abandon his children. His hands are not deterred by the depth of our sin or the extent of our brokenness. Instead, they are drawn to us in our need. Because one of the most profound expressions of the love in God's hands is found in their gentleness. The same hands that hold the universe in place are tender enough to wipe away our tears. He does not handle us harshly or impatiently, but with a gentleness that reflects his understanding of our frailty. He knows our fears, our doubts, and our struggles, and he meets us with kindness. His hands are a place of safety where we can find rest for our weary souls. His touch is never invasive or forceful. It is always an invitation to trust and to receive his love. God's loving hands also bear the marks of sacrifice. Nowhere is his love more evident than in the hands of Christ, pierced for our transgressions. Those hands stretched out on the cross speak of a love so profound that it defies comprehension. In his willingness to suffer and die for us, God demonstrated the depth of his love. It is a love that gives everything, holds nothing back, and seeks only the best for the beloved. The scars in Jesus' hands are a reminder that his love is not theoretical or abstract. It is tangible, costly, and eternal. The love of God's hands is not limited to the moments when we feel deserving of it. His love is unconditional, reaching us even in our rebellion and unworthiness. He does not wait for us to clean ourselves up or get our lives in order before extending his hands to us. Instead, he meets us where we are, offering his love freely and without reservation. This is the beauty of his loving hands. They are always open, always reaching, always ready to draw us close. God's hands are loving in their patience. He does not grow tired of us or give up on us, even when we stumble repeatedly. His love is long-suffering, enduring through our failures and mistakes. Like a potter working with clay, he patiently shapes us, never discarding us when we are marred or imperfect. His love sees beyond our flaws to the person he created us to be. He is not in a rush. His hands move at the pace of love, ensuring that the work he begins in us will be completed. The love of God's hands is also a source of empowerment. He does not simply hold us in his love, he strengthens us with it. His hands lift us when we are down, steady us when we are weak, and encourage us when we are discouraged. He does not simply carry us, he equips us to stand and to walk in his purposes. His love is not a crutch, but a foundation that enables us to grow, to thrive, and to become all that he has called us to be. God's hands are loving in their faithfulness. His love does not waver or fade with time. It is not dependent on our actions or circumstances. His hands hold us firmly, even when we feel like letting go. His love is a constant in a world that is often unpredictable and unreliable. We can trust that his hands will never fail us, never abandon us, and never stop loving us. His love is the anchor that holds us steady in the storms of life. The love of God's hands is not limited to this life. It extends into eternity. His hands guide us through the journey of life, but they also prepare a place for us in his presence forever. The same hands that formed us in our mother's womb will one day welcome us into his eternal embrace. His love is not confined by time or space. It is an everlasting love that spans the ages. To be held in God's loving hands is to experience a love that is deeper, stronger, and more faithful than anything this world can offer. His hands do not simply hold us, they cherish us. They do not merely carry us, they celebrate us. His love is the defining characteristic of his relationship with us, and his hands are the tangible expression of that love. In his hands, we find everything we need: protection, provision, guidance, comfort, and strength. His hands are a refuge for the weary, a source of joy for the brokenhearted, and a reminder that we are never alone. God's hands are loving, and in them we are eternally safe. The power of letting go is one of the most transformative truths a person can embrace. Letting go is not about giving up or resigning oneself to failure. It is about releasing the things that weigh us down and hinder us from moving forward. It is a conscious decision to surrender control, relinquish burdens, and trust in the process of life. Letting go allows us to make space for growth, healing, and freedom. It is not always easy, but it is essential for living a life of peace and purpose. Letting go often begins with recognizing what we are holding on to and why. Sometimes we cling to past experiences, whether they are moments of joy that we wish to relive or moments of pain that we cannot seem to forget. We hold on to relationships that no longer serve us, to dreams that may no longer align with who we are, or to fears that paralyze us from stepping into the unknown. The human tendency to hold on is rooted in our desire for control and certainty. We believe that by gripping tightly to what we know, we can prevent pain or maintain happiness. But in reality, holding on often leads to stagnation, frustration, and exhaustion. And letting go requires courage because it means stepping into uncertainty. It means trusting that even if we release what we are clinging to, something better will come. It is an act of faith, a declaration that we believe life is not static but dynamic, constantly unfolding in ways that we may not fully understand. Letting go is not about losing, it is about gaining. It is about shedding the old to make way for the new, releasing the temporary to embrace the eternal, and surrendering control to access true freedom. The power of letting go lies in its ability to free us from the weight of the past. The past, while it holds valuable lessons, can become a prison when we refuse to let it go. Regrets, grudges, and unresolved pain keep us tethered to what was, preventing us from fully embracing what is. Letting go of the past does not mean forgetting or invalidating what happened. It means choosing not to let it define or control us. It means forgiving ourselves and others, not because they necessarily deserve it, but because we deserve the peace that forgiveness brings. It means acknowledging that while we cannot change the past, we can choose how it shapes our future. And letting go also empowers us to release our attachment to outcomes. So much of our stress and anxiety comes from our desire to control how things will unfold. We set expectations for how our lives should look, how people should behave, and how situations should resolve. When reality does not align with our expectations, we feel disappointed, frustrated, or even defeated. Letting go of our attachment to specific outcomes does not mean we stop caring or striving. It means we release the need to control what is ultimately beyond our power. It means doing our best and trusting that whatever happens, we will be okay. It is an act of surrender, not to defeat, but to the flow of life. Letting go creates space for healing. When we hold on to pain, we block the process of healing. We replay old wounds, cling to feelings of anger or resentment, and resist moving forward. But healing requires release. It requires us to let go of the pain, not by denying it or suppressing it, but by acknowledging it and then setting it free. Healing is not about forgetting what hurt us. It is about no longer allowing it to control us. When we let go, we reclaim our power and our peace. We open ourselves to the possibility of wholeness and renewal. Letting go is also a powerful act of self-love. It is an acknowledgement that we are worthy of peace, joy, and freedom. When we let go of what no longer serves us, we honor ourselves and our well-being. We choose to prioritize our mental, emotional, and spiritual health over the need to cling to what is familiar but harmful. And letting go is not selfish, it is necessary. It is a way of saying, I value myself enough to release what weighs me down. It is an act of liberation, a declaration that we refuse to be defined by our struggles or limited by our fears. The power of letting go extends to our relationships. Holding on to toxic or unhealthy relationships can drain us, leaving us feeling depleted and unfulfilled. Letting go does not mean we stop caring for others. It means we recognize when a relationship is no longer mutually beneficial or aligned with our growth. It means setting boundaries and choosing connections that uplift and inspire us. Letting go of a relationship can be one of the most painful decisions we make, but it is also one of the most loving acts we can do for ourselves and often for the other person. Letting go is a practice, not a one-time event. It is a journey of continual release, of recognizing when we are holding on too tightly and choosing to let go again and again. Each time we let go, we grow stronger, more resilient, and more attuned to the flow of life. Can we learn to trust ourselves in the process to embrace change and uncertainty with grace? Letting go is not about being passive or indifferent. It is about being open and receptive. It is about recognizing that life is constantly evolving, and so must we. The power of letting go is transformative. It frees us from the chains of the past, the grip of fear, and the weight of control. It opens the door to new possibilities, new experiences, and new growth. It allows us to live in the present moment fully and authentically without being burdened by what was or what might be. Letting go is not about giving up. It is about rising above. It is about stepping into the fullness of who we are and embracing the life that is waiting for us on the other side of release. So I challenge you today, take your fears, your plans, your dreams, your struggles, everything, and place them in God's hands. Stop holding on so tightly to what you were never meant to control. Surrender is not a sign of weakness. It's a declaration of trust. And when you leave everything in his hands, you will see his hands in everything. You will see his fingerprints on your circumstances, his provision in your needs, and his presence in your journey. Let go, trust him, and watch how he takes what you give him and turns it into something beautiful.